Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the February 21st Committee of the Whole meeting, and at this time I will call the meeting to order. Please note that Mayor Haxon is absent with notice, and in my role of acting mayor, I will be chairing today's meeting. So item B is declaration of interest. Are there any declarations of interest from members of the committee? Seeing none, I will move to our land acknowledgement statement. The town of East Gwillimbury recognizes and acknowledges the lands originally used and occupied by the first peoples of the Williams Treaties First Nations and other Indigenous peoples, and on behalf of Council, I thank them for sharing this land. We also acknowledge the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation as East Gwillimbury's closest First Nation community and recognize the unique relationship the Chippewas have with the lands and waters of this territory. They are the water protectors and environmental stewards of these lands, and we join them in these responsibilities. So that takes us to community announcements. I just wanted to remind everybody that we will be hosting on February 27th at 7 p.m. here in the council chambers a community safety session hosted by York Regional Police. We'll be right here in the chambers, but it also will be available online, so hopefully people can attend and tune in. Is there any other announcements? Yeah, Councillor Foster.
Thank you. I just wanted to announce again February the 24th, that's this Saturday. We'll be doing the coldest night of the year walk in support of Blue Door Shelters. I believe we're right around $5,000 in fundraising so far, which is not bad. I think we will meet at 2:30 at Yonge and Mount Albert Road at the trailhead for the Nokita Trail, and we'll do our walk on the Nokita Trail. So if you're available or want to contribute to our campaign, we'd love to have it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Leahy.
Thank you very much. I'd like to make an announcement about the Team EG 5K Run Walk for South Lake taking place this year on Sunday, April the 28th. Please save that date. We'd be delighted to have you join the EG team. And to register, you go to Team EG page on the Run Walk South Lake Hospital website. So to help us reach our fundraising goal, we're encouraging everyone this year to donate or raise $100 in recognition of South Lake's 100th anniversary for providing the best care for patients in our communities. So let's make it the best year ever. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Leahy. Any other announcements from the committee? Seeing none, there are no deputations at this time, but we do have presentations, and our first presentation, our friends from the town of Newmarket are here to speak about their Newmarket's automated speed enforcement program. So can I get a mover to table the item? Yeah, Councillor Crone, thank you. Happy to have you folks up and do your presentation.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of council, staff, and viewing public. We're very excited to be here today to talk about the automated speed enforcement program and the journey that we've been on for a little over a year now in Newmarket, bringing this to fruition. So my name is Lisa Lyons, and I'm the Director of Legislative Services and the Town Clerk in Newmarket. We also have Ben Worthington with us. He's the Acting Manager of Automated Speed Enforcement and our AMPS program. In the audience, we have Esther Armchuk. She is our Commissioner of Corporate Services, and she's the sponsor of this program in Newmarket. And we have Ian McDougall, who is our CAO. So again, thank you. We're very happy to talk about our journey in Newmarket, and I'm going to turn it over to Ben, who's going to lead us through what that has looked like so far.
Awesome. Thank you, Lisa. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of council. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about our automated speed enforcement program today in Newmarket. Next slide, please. So just kind of high-level overview of what is automated speed enforcement. So it is a camera and radar-based system that automatically captures vehicles traveling above the posted speed limit in community safety zones within the municipality. The goal of the program is essentially to take the community safety zones and school zones signs seriously whenever they're seen, and in these designated areas enforce speed limits as permitted by the regulation for automated speed enforcement. You can see just on the bottom of that slide there, just a quick setup of how the the system would be set up. So you have your community safety zone start to finish, the camera taking pictures of videos speeding above the posted speed limit, and then you have your municipal speed camera in use sign preceding the site location. Next slide, please. So just to highlight the difference in the two types of zones, so this program can be run in school zones as well as community safety zones. So with school zones, you do have the requirement that the road segment has to be accessible by an entrance or an exit to the school, and it has to be within 150 meters of the property line. With the community safety zone, there is a requirement that the posted speed limit is below 80 kilometers an hour, so 79 kilometers an hour or less. And the only requirement past that is that it has to be of council's, that there's a special concern for public safety. So recommendation, generally speaking, is to transition any school zones to community safety zones, just to give council that ability to set that road segment, as far away as they wish. If it's around a corner or anything like that, as long as you can articulate that there's a concern for public safety, you can essentially establish a community safety zone. So additionally, with community safety zones, they obviously don't only apply to schools, so you can apply them to things like retirement housing, hospitals, parks and playgrounds, trails, places of worship, sports fields, stuff like that. Next slide, please. So just briefly talking about how the community will benefit from the automated speed enforcement program. So it is a highly effective tool in mitigating speed in these areas. Its average effectiveness is about 53% reduction in speed just across programs and research that's out there and available right now. It is implemented solely in the designated zones, the community safety zones and school zones, and it is intended to increase road safety where there's vulnerable locations identified within the community. Obviously, with reduced speeds, you have reduced risk of injury, collisions, and fatality as a result of car accidents. And the other benefit is that this program does have adjudication through the Administrative Monetary Penalty System, or more commonly known as the AMP system, which is the municipal court system that avoids any provincial court delays. Lastly, it does alleviate any police can focus more on critical issues within the community where this program can effectively enforce in these locations. Next slide, please. So just a couple of the key components for the automated speed enforcement program. So you do have the automated speed enforcement equipment, the actual physical camera. You do have routine inspections. The certificate of accuracy has to be done within 12 months, for example. And daily, the officers can tune in and actually see the view of the camera, make sure that it has been knocked over or vandalized or anything in the meantime. Another component of the program is that the community safety zones and school zones do need to be designated by council by bylaw. So in the Town of Newmarket, we have our traffic bylaw that outlines 37 community safety zones within the community. Another component is the processing center. So that's where the actual tickets are reviewed by provincial offences officers, screened out for if they're not valid, and then they process them and mail them out to registered vehicle owners for the violations. And another requirement is the 90-day signage that needs to be posted prior to issuing any penalty for these locations. During that 90-day period, you can issue warning notices or collect traffic data with the camera systems. You just can't issue a monetary penalty during that time. And then lastly, and I kind of stress that this is a pretty key component, is the public education piece surrounding this. Obviously, the program is intended as a community safety initiative, and there's a lot of work that goes into making sure that that image is maintained within the community. Next slide, please. So just a high-level view of what the process is. So the camera system obviously takes the picture and transfers the information to a processing center. The processing center screens out any invalid images, so if there's any sort of plate erosion or, say, interference with weather, or for whatever reason the image is invalid, that would be screened out before it's sent to the MTO. Whenever the valid images have been collected, we send those images to the MTO, or the information associated with those images, I should say, to the MTO, and there is an $8.25 fee associated with accessing that database to retrieve the vehicle owner information. From there, we combine the information collected by the camera systems as well as the vehicle owner information. You put it onto one penalty notice, and you have a provincial offences officer certify the violation, and then it gets mailed out to the registered vehicle owner for that vehicle. And lastly is the administrative monetary penalty system, which is a big game changer for us. So I'll actually pass it over to Lisa to speak a bit more about that.
Thank you, Ben. So we've had the AMPS program effective in Newmarket for the last 4 years with all of our parking offenses and our bylaw matters. And when Ben says it's a game changer, it truly is. It's just amazing with bringing compliance in those areas that we've always struggled with over the years. So we're very fortunate to have our program already up and running, and it will be a cornerstone to the ASE program moving forward with the amount of tickets that get issued. Some of the problems we've heard in other processing centers that are still in the provincial courts, they had to cap out how many tickets they could issue because they just couldn't process that many tickets with the court system. So we're not anticipating having that problem, and we've actually staffed up. We have 8 hearing officers, independent hearing officers that are contracted through the Town of Newmarket that will be available to do hearings. We have staff that are trained to do screenings. We've developed policies and procedures over the last 4 years for an AMPS program with best practices, and we actually have independent trainers now that are training our own staff and the hearing officers on consistency. So it's a great program for the public also because it's extremely customer service friendly. It's about having a conversation. It's not about going to court. So you have that conversation at the screening process, and the majority of the matters are settled at that stage. If they do go to a hearing, again, it can be done online or in person. Most people want to do them online because they don't have to take time off work to do a dispute. And they get to state their piece with an independent hearing body, and they really appreciate being heard. So we've had really good feedback in the past on our program, and we are looking forward to having this incorporated with the ASE program when we launch. Thank you. Next slide. Oh, well, with that, we can open up to questions. It's pretty high level. I know we had a short period, and we could talk about this all day, but we'll stop here and see if you have any questions. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, folks. Members of the committee, do we have any questions at this time? Councillor Crone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our presenters for coming out. I'm overwhelmed with all the support that you've brought with you. I'm a little concerned about who's running the show back in Newmarket, though. This is a subject I was really excited to see on the agenda. Community safety is probably the #1 email that I get as a councillor. People are very concerned about community safety. From everything I've heard, this type of program is probably the #1 deterrent in reducing and calming speeds. You mentioned in one of your slides that you saw a 53% reduction in speeding, or the speed. Maybe you could just better define that for me. But was that Newmarket's own experience?
Yep, through you, Mr. Chair. So that is the average from ASE programs based on research. So that is not Newmarket exclusive. That's the average, give or take, that an ASE program would produce.
Okay, and you talked about collecting the data and sending it to the MTO. When you folks have control of that data, how is it, privacy is obviously a big concern. How is that protected and safeguarded against falling into the wrong hands?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So similar to parking infractions, we have data sharing agreements with the Ministry of Transportation, which have very stringent rules and regulations as to access to that data. We do a privacy impact assessment to ensure that we're meeting all of the privacy regulations. So it's very similar to the same data that we collect through traffic tickets when we issue parking tickets. And there is an agreement that you have to do specifically for automated speed enforcement, which has stipulations that you have to follow for privacy.
Okay, so there, have you heard of any breaches in data?
Not to date.
Okay,
No.
that's good. That's important to know. I'm excited, as I said earlier, I'm excited about this. I want to learn more about it. I think, the opponents of this will say that it's a cash grab, but I actually have a foolproof way to subvert that. It's really simple. It's just do the speed limit. You're in community safety zones. There's no excuse to be speeding in those zones. I think, we're at a spot now where we would love to have police on every street in our town, but we know that's just not possible. This, I think, is a way of, I would think, freeing up their time to do other important crime-solving things. Now, there was a couple of years ago, we reduced our speed limits within the subdivisions to 40 kilometers an hour, and I think there's good reason for that, but it's important to get people to reduce their speed. I pulled up an old report I think the City of Toronto did on a road safety plan, and this is important to note, that a pedestrian hit by a car going 60 kilometers an hour has a 95% chance of dying. And you compare that with a 30% chance of dying if hit by a vehicle doing 40 kilometers an hour. So I think any area where there are children or they're vulnerable, if we can help reduce that, I think that's a good thing. I'm looking forward to hearing more. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for my time.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions from this committee? Councillor Foster.
Thank you. I'll try to maybe lighten this up a little bit. So give us the bad news. So has there been an outcry from the residents? Has there been, the resident that calls you and says, you're taking pictures of me, you're cheating, you're doing all that kind of stuff? And I guess to go along with that, how many members of your own staff have jumped up and said, yeah, it got me yesterday or a couple of weeks ago? I'm just wondering about some of the possible fallout, negative stuff that might come out of it.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So we currently don't have our own speed cameras active yet, but we do have the regional ones that have rotated through the community. In the past, we've done our discussions with council where we've presented this program, and this has been a council strategic priority for several terms now. The point made, traffic calls about speeding are probably one of the #1 complaints we also receive, and I'm sure every community is in that same standard, that is probably #1. So when we did presentations over the last year to council, we have not, as far as I'm aware, had a member of public stand up and say, I'm not in favor of this program. It's welcomed. People have been waiting for years for this to roll out in those zones. And to your point, the area that you want to, specify, this is going to be in community safety zones. This isn't on every road in the town. It's in areas where there's vulnerable pedestrians walking. And you are correct. I mean, many staff members have received tickets, but everybody acknowledges they've received them somewhere in the province of Ontario at some point in time. But it does make you stand up and realize, geez, I didn't think I was speeding, but I must have been. So that's the intention of the program, is to bring that awareness. And we do have a very fulsome communication plan to roll out around that piece and to work with the public and do heavy education prior to the cameras launching, during the launch, and even as we continue to carry on the use of the cameras.
Councillor Roy DeClemente.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to our presenters. You've noted that in your traffic bylaw you have 37 community safety zones. Are you planning to implement 37 cameras? Or are they going to be rotating like the region does with theirs, or what? How do you envision that sort of implementation going?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. We actually have 14 areas identified that are going to have permanent cameras mounted. So 2 in each ward. And that was done through consultation with our traffic area in Newmarket, where we looked at stats and numbers of the high-risk areas. And we identified the highest risk areas in each of the wards, and then had a conversation with council as to approving cameras in 2 locations to start our program. So 14 cameras in total, and they will not be rotating.
Thank you. I don't know if you know, but we've recently started to look to implement an AMP system on our own side of things, regardless of the automated speed enforcement issues. I guess given that many of us spend a fair amount of time on Newmarket roads, it's good to know that we're going to have to be a little bit more careful going forward. And I absolutely agree with you. I think the speed and road safety issues have been number one. You name the street in East Gwillimbury, and in fact, my answer to most people is you name the street in this province, and somebody's complaining about somebody speeding on it. So I think this is certainly something that we would be welcome to learn more about. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions from committee? Seeing none, I will, we've moved this, thank you. And so we'll look to receive it now. All those in favor of the receipt, all those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, folks. So that takes us, we're going to actually enter into a closed meeting now. So can I get a mover for that to proceed? Councillor Roy D. Clemente, thank you. And so be it resolved that committee proceed into a closed meeting of Committee of the Whole Council at 2:21 p.m. to deal with the following matters: a trade secret or a scientific, technical, commercial, financial, or labor relations information supplied in confidence to the municipality or local board, which, if disclosed, could reasonably be expected to be prejudice significantly the competitive position or interfere significantly with the contractual or other negotiations of a person, group of persons, or organization under Municipal Act Section 239 2I, and this is regarding Newmarket's automated speed enforcement program. So we have the mover. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries. Wonderful. Thanks, folks. And if we can just take a few minutes here, and we will get the room set for a closed meeting. Great, thank you, Madam Clerk. We're on to a Rise and Report coming out of the closed meeting of Committee of the Whole for Council. I'll look for a mover for that. Councillor Foster. Thank you, sir. Be resolved that Committee Rise and Report from closed meeting of Committee of the Whole Council at 2:50 p.m. And that takes us to item H, which is our East Gwillimbury Public Library Board. Would love to have a mover to table this. Councillor Carruthers will be tabling this. Thank you very much. Do we have our friends from the library here? There we go, walking in. Filing in. The lectern? The lectern is yours, Ms. Christine Glenn. Yeah, Councillor Roy DiClemente, if you'd like to
Thank you.
take some time here.
I'd let her catch her breath. At this point, I would just, we have a motion to receive on the table, a memorandum of something that's happening at the library. It's exciting, and the board is supporting a member of our staff as they are transitioning to a new role, and we're looking forward to recruiting a new CEO. So if there's any questions, Ms. Glenn is here to answer them, but I don't know if there are any at this point. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So Councillor Carruthers moved this. Councillor Carruthers also sitting on the library board. Would you like to speak to this as well?
I think Councillor Roddy Clemente summed it up quite well.
Great. Christine Glenn from the library board. I'll give you the opportunity if you would like to speak. No? Yes? You did prepare something?
But I think this is a really good news story for the library from a few perspectives. We get to retain our CEO through the next few years with her expertise. We want to make sure that our library is a place where people want to come and work and stay. So being able to keep her is amazing. And the fact that we're sending a message to the library staff that if you have things and you're a good performer, we're going to do what it takes to keep you on staff. So for me, I think this is a really good news story. And I think it's a really good news story for your investment in our new branch. We're going to have someone that really knows what she's doing to make sure that this goes well. And we appreciate your investment, and we thought you'd want to know that.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Any questions from our committee? So we have the motion to receive as moved. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. Wonderful. Thank you. Appreciate it. So at this time, actually, we will turn it to Councillor Carruthers to chair the next section for corporate services.
Thank you very much, Acting Mayor Johns. We have 2 items under corporate services today, both good news updates, and I'll turn it over to General Manager Gandhi to take us through the first item regarding the strategic plan update report, which is on page 13 of your agenda.
Can you hear me? Sorry about that. Through Madam Chair, we are pleased to bring to you both of these reports. Laura Hanna is going to speak to the first one. You may recall in previous years, we did a different type of presentation, which honestly, in terms of putting it together, was far more time-consuming and laborious. This one was a bit more fun, I would say, in terms of pulling all the information together and information in a way that is digestible and understandable and relatable. And so I hope you appreciate the way in which the information is shared with you. I will follow. Oh, just one other point on that. If there are any questions pertaining to elements, Laura will likely turn to the respective general manager to speak to those points. So that's the way we'll approach those questions. And then I will follow that presentation with an update on the EGU Belong Employee Experience Strategy as committed to in 2023.
Thank you, Amita. Just wanted to pause for a moment if, Mark, you wanted to provide any additional context or comments?
Mr. Chair, through you, just very briefly, just that to build on the general manager's comments, that council did approve their 4-year strategic plan, and what we are doing is doing a process whereby annually we're preparing our business plans to support the objectives set out and the vision set out in the strat plan, and then annually reporting back on how did we do to achieve that, and that would culminate at the end of the term of council in some sort of cumulative summary report that would indicate the plan that you confirmed and what you've been able to do with staff support to achieve those objectives. So this is the first year of that reporting cycle.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So good afternoon, Acting Mayor, members of council. I am really pleased to be here to introduce the 2023 Strategic Plan Annual Report. So before I begin and walk through each slide, I really wanted to take a moment, Mita alluded to this as well, to thank all of the staff team who contributed to creating this document. So all of the information you see within the document was developed as part of several working sessions from the extended management team. So all of this information is really from throughout the organization. And then I also wanted to thank the communications team. So we have the communications team who helped develop the design, put together the document, and draft all of the content into the communications that you see today. So that's Danielle Malzer, Rachel Thompson, and Mita Gandhi. Next slide, please. Perfect. So I'm going to touch a little bit on some of the things that Mita and Mark mentioned as well. So as we know, as part of the strategic plan process, we did commit to put together annual reports for the community and for council. So that's what you see before you today. Although the report, it is very robust, it includes a number of accomplishments from throughout the town. It doesn't include everything that happened in 2023. So what we included are items that we felt might be of the highest interest to our residents. But with that being said, we're also very open to any feedback from council today or in the next little bit to update, as we do just have this in a draft document at this time. So if there's anything that you see as missing, please let us know, and we're happy to add that in before we finalize the document. Next slide, please. Perfect. So before we go through each strategic priority, I wanted to really talk about the design. So this was designed in-house with the help of our graphic and marketing coordinator, Rachel. So a big special thanks to Rachel, who's created this look and feel. You may have noticed over the last year the consistency in the brand. And so that's all related to the strategic plan. It's been very intentional, and over the next 3 years, you're going to continue to see that look and feel be maintained. So at the end of the 4-year term, the way that we see it is that essentially you could have a package. The front of that package is your 2022 to 2026 strategic plan. Next, you're going to have the 2024 business plan, the business plan and budget, and the annual report for that year. So each year you would put together that package slowly, and then at the end, you'll have the end of term. So you'll have a complete package that talks about your term of council. Next slide, please. Perfect, thank you. So I'm going to walk through each of the strategic priorities and highlight just a couple of the points. I'm not going to walk through each bullet point. Everybody can read through those themselves. Just trying to talk about some of the points that might be of interest to the community. So for presentation purposes, I'm leading the walkthrough of these slides, but if there's any questions, all of the general managers are here and happy to talk about their topics as well. Also at the bottom of the slides, you'll note the activity metrics. So those are very simply just activity metrics. They don't represent sort of KPIs per se. So we've included those just for community interest and to provide additional information. We are continuing to develop our KPI program. So in the future, we're hoping to use that a little bit more extensively to help us report back on our progress. So to kick us off, we're going to start with quality programs and services. Sorry. All right. So 2023 was really a year of modernization. You've heard that in this room many times. Many services are going to transition to online options. That helps our internal staff, but it also helps make things easier for residents as well. We're going to continue to see an increase with these tools and work with all of the departments to communicate those externally where possible to continue to see those numbers grow. We also completed a statutory multi-year accessibility plan. So this is one of those documents that sometimes it gets approved, it doesn't get a lot of fanfare, but it is very important to the operations of the organization. It's a 4-year plan, and it really talks about how we're going to continue on our journey to make things accessible. It includes items like a review of the content of our website, multi-year plans to ensure our facility meets accessibility needs, and just investigating options to integrate accessibility features even into things such as our parks and trails. So we do have a cross-departmental team who's working on that, and you'll continue to see updates of those at council. Next slide, please. All right, one theme that you're going to see throughout this report is sort of back end or behind the scenes type of work. And so a lot of that happened in 2023 and is going to be moving forward and shared with council and the community in 2024 for feedback and approval. Sometimes even the smallest projects can take up to a year or more of development just to make sure that we're getting the right technology, the right resources, information's accurate and ready to be released. So I just wanted to talk about one example of that. So that's our water meter replacement program. In 2023, the Public Works team completed their multi-year water meter replacement program. So that replaced over 10,000 meters. This allowed for improvements to meter accuracy and also for efficient remote meter readings, which was necessary for our monthly billing. Building on that success, there was a pilot program in Mount Albert in 2023 that was installing, it's an antenna-based gateway that allows us to collect those meter readings on like a near live schedule. So that pilot's going to be expanded in 2024. And as that evolves, we're going to have the accurate digital information to be able to provide water meters on an as-needed basis. So basically, you call in and you have a question, we're able to check that live for you. So that's pinpointing irregularities, if there's leaks, that sort of thing. And eventually, that information will be able to be shared with residents, and they'll have access to that information. So that's just an example of how years can build up to those forward-facing pieces for our residents and move towards modernization and efficiency. We also launched an internal Track My Plow app for management and customer service use only at this point. It's in that beta mode, and then we do have hopes of launching this publicly in the future as well. Okay, so we'll go to the next priority. Thank you. So now we're going to look at responsible growth. A couple of items we wanted to talk about. So our economic development team continues to grow. In July of 2023, we hired a new manager who's been working with our economic development coordinator and our general manager of development services to support many notable development projects, such as the Woodbine One, while continuing to grow our business support programming and supporting EG's investment readiness. They also came to you with reports and leverage funding to help support the popular Y Space series. So that's a partnership with York Region, and we also have our Digital Main Street program, both of which provide training and mentorship opportunities for local businesses, and we know are extremely popular with our businesses. Another area that's been very popular in 2023, as we all know, are legislative changes. And so most notably, More Homes Built Faster Act. This has had a major impact on the organization. Everybody from our planning and building departments to we have legal and finance, even communications, sort of trying to understand what these changes are and how they'll implement, how they'll affect us as we implement growth within the organization and in the public. So we anticipate that this will continue to have impacts in 2024. Next slide, please. Thank you. As I mentioned earlier, there are a number of projects where the background work took place in 2023, and the final products will move forward for public review and council's review in 2024. So some of the projects on this slide are related to our master plans, so our active trails and transportation master plan, our water and wastewater master plan, and our transportation master plans. For the public, our master plans are comprehensive plans that guide the long-term development and growth within EG. So they provide that framework for future decision-making, and they need to be updated every 5 years. So That background work was something that was extensively looked at in 2023. You'll see the public meetings happening in 2024 and come forward for approval in 2024. Next slide, please. Thank you. The next strategic priority is environmental stewardship. So that's a new priority for this term of council. Previously, this work was embedded in other priorities, but for 2022 to 2026, it was pulled out. It's made its own priority, which helps to show the importance for our organization. It is a really exciting priority as we continue to grow and learn in this area. In 2023, the town conducted a review of the past environmental practices that we've undertaken, and we worked with many municipal partners, with council, with the public, and with staff to create a draft environmental strategy. So that outlines the town's commitment to environmental sustainability. The plan has 42 actions and will help to continue to advance our focus and efforts in that area. As with the master plans, this strategy is actually out right now for final review by the public and will be coming back to council in March of this year. Next slide, please. So as we continue to focus on environmental initiatives, our programs will continue to grow and expand. As part of our environmental strategy, we'll also focus more on promoting opportunities for residents to continue to make environmentally sustainable choices. So such as continuing to offer and promote things like the curbside programs, reintroducing e-waste. We'll also continue to work with our departmental teams, such as the finance team, to promote those online services that have the environmental impacts as well. Next slide, please. So the next strategy or strategic priority is build complete communities. This slide here is one I think many of our residents would be very excited about. The construction of the new Health and Active Living Plaza, we hear it quite often, continues to progress on schedule and on budget, which is great. The new facility will have our park space, our first ever pool, a new library location, and program space. So moving forward, we'll continue with the construction, and we'll also begin hiring for many of the positions that will be based out of that facility, with plans to open in spring 2025. So that's very exciting. Staff are also working on many other park projects throughout the community. So just to list a couple, the final designs for Emily Park and the Simcoe Trail extension, designs for Soldiers Bay, Recreation and Education Pier. We just approved a partnership that will allow us to begin construction on the Nokita Trail supplementary parking. So that will be south of the bridge on Yonge Street there, and the Oriole Wilderness Park. So residents can look forward to these projects all commencing in 2024, which I know they're very excited about. In addition, the activity metrics on this page reference our building activity in the community. So what we would note is that these are actually lower than previous years, but it's showing that there's still significant work going on in the community. Next slide, please. Okay. So as the town continues to grow, this priority focuses on ensuring that we have a balanced community. So to highlight a couple more projects, the Holland Landing and Mount Albert downtown revitalizations, they're both of significant community interest. In 2023, we had multiple meetings and public feedback opportunities to hear from the public about what it is they wanted to see with those. These are multi-year projects, again. So what you'll see is continue to move ahead with detailed design in 2024 and construction in 2025. Continuing on the theme of our municipal plans and back-end work, the planning department spent 2023 a majority of their time building a very strong team to give them a good base and a good foundation. But while they were doing that, they were also working on a lot of other work. So our comprehensive review of our official plan, for example. The changes that they've made will ensure that the OP aligns with new and emerging legislation, and those updates, again, will be coming to council in 2024 for approval. They also began working on the secondary plan for the urban expansion areas, and that's going to help us identify what will be allowed in those lands moving forward. Next slide, please. So this is our last strategic priority that we'll talk about, which is the culture of municipal excellence. This is one I'm excited to talk about. So in 2023, it was a very important year for customer service. Not only did we complete the retrofit on the upper level of the Civic Center, that created a more functional workspace so that staff were sort of separated. They could take phone calls there. They could help people at the desk. There's a little bit of noise limiting. It's also, with COVID restrictions, that's sort of what started that project. So it ensures sort of a safe work environment, and the accessible customer service desk was added in. So not only did we complete that project, but we also transitioned to a second customer service desk at the sports complex. So that cannot happen overnight. I'll tell you, that was almost the full year transition. It takes time to cross-train. It takes time to staff and find the right staff who are available to make that happen. And so the team took a lot of time building that, and I was very proud of them. And they're looking forward in 2025 to expanding to a third desk. So it's a time of big change for customer service, and it's very exciting as we continue to sort of try and meet those customer service needs that we talk about. Next slide, please. Okay, and lastly, I want to talk about how we're trying to create a highly engaged staff team. Last year, we launched the EGU Belong strategy. It has several new programs for our employees. And so far, we've seen really great feedback from our staff about the different pieces that have been brought forward. And we look forward to continuing that in 2024. We also are continuing to grow our equity, diversity, and inclusion program, expand training opportunities. And in 2023, we participated in the Pride Parade in Newmarket. So that was a first for council and staff. And there's a photo included on the screen. So I think that that was a good time for all who participated. At this time, I've completed our walkthrough, but I'm happy to hear any feedback from council. And again, as I mentioned, as a group, we're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Hannah. We have a motion before us to receive this presentation report and that the 2023 Strategic Plan Annual Report be approved and promoted to the community. Can I have a mover? Councillor Crone. Thank you. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Councillor Johns.
I'm just so proud to see this. Like we have these discussions at the council table. We have great dialogue with the team, and we land something, and then we go out and we work to execute it. And I was just so proud to see this come back in that way. I love the KPIs. I think there's a lot of stuff to celebrate. Obviously, we're focused on continuous improvement, and staff are too, but like, it's okay to pause and look back every once in a while, and the opportunity to do that in here and what you did, and I could, listening to the connotation in your voice too, I could tell that you were proud too, and yeah, the whole staff, I'm very proud to be a part of this team, and I think it's great. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Just one comment on, is kind of, this is in the weeds, and so take it for what it's worth, but as we were doing the tree bylaw consultations, and then we also worked to make sure that that budget was set up for the tree planting, that the money came from the development community. Aaron Karmazin and I were talking about the amount of money that was in with the tree planting that we could use, and as it tied into the environmental strategies, as it talked out, as you presented, I think it would be cool to see a KPI that was tracked on the number of trees that we planted. Like, we have a strategic, it is part of the strategic plan to grow the canopy, and when you look at the number of dollars that are sitting there from the development community that aren't taxpayer funded, and you look at what a cost of a tree is, I think there's an opportunity for us to set a goal of planting one tree per household per year. And I just think that there would be a great comms exercise against that, and a great opportunity for engagement with folks. And so I'll throw that out there for what it's worth, but I'll just loop back at how I started again. I'm really proud. This is exciting, and yeah, I think the staff should be proud, and I'm really proud to be a part of it, so thank you.
Excellent comments. Anyone else have any comments? I'll just echo Councillor John's comments on how exciting this is, and it really is something to be very proud of. Are there anything to add from staff at all? Seeing none, I'll call the motion. All in favor? And that's carried. I'll turn it back to Ms. Gandhi for our next item regarding EG You Belong update.
Good afternoon, through you, Madam Chair, and to members of council. I'm pleased to provide an update on the EG You Belong Employee Experience Strategy. Since launching the initiative in June 2023, we've made huge strides. When we launched the initiative, I committed to providing updates to council on a regular basis. And our first update to council was in October, and today is update number 2. Before I begin, I want to honor the team who is responsible for the initiatives I'm about to describe. Without them, none of this is possible. Some of the individuals are in the audience. Aaron Smythe, Liz Norwood, Chris McPherson, Isabella Pelota, and Daniela Gray. I'm also extremely pleased to announce Dahlia Dumrath, our new Director of People and Belonging. She's right over here. Adalia joined EG yesterday, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of opportunities for you to meet her. She'll be delivering this presentation the next time we have it. To begin, I'll provide a brief overview. If we can go to the next slide, please. I'll provide a brief overview of the strategy, which evolved from the 2022 employee survey. The strategy consists of 4 pillars: your experience, your career, Team EG, and our commitments. These pillars are built upon the foundation of modernization, policies, and equity, diversity, and inclusion, and each of these elements are embedded in all of the pillars. Our ultimate goal is to foster a culture of belonging. The title of the strategy, and now the branch's name, conveys the organization's commitment to creating a safe workplace where everyone feels seen for their contributions, connected to their coworkers, supported, and proud of the work and their organization. I'll start with your experience. Next slide, please. And next slide. Thank you. Since October, we facilitated de-escalation training in partnership with the Centre for Addiction and Mental Health, CAMH. We extended optional health benefits to paid on-call firefighters, completed the part-time salary review, which we are now in the process of confirming the salary bands, and we'll be rolling this out to staff in the coming months. We obtained council approval for the multi-year accessibility plan. Laura mentioned that in her presentation, which outlines the work that's being done to make EG a more accessible and inclusive community. And through the budget process, we're implementing pregnancy and parental leave top-up. Our policies are outdated. That's why we established a policy review committee, which is undertaking the much overdue review of most of the 60-plus policies in human resources, people and belonging, that we have. What's ahead? We're rolling out the pregnancy and parental leave policy. We're continuing our journey to support staff mental health through offering psychological safety training for people leaders and a companion course for staff. We're further supporting staff by providing report writing and presentation skills. That's going to be a little bit later on this year. And together with the other Northern 6 municipalities and Bradford, we're establishing a roster of vendors who can deliver training on a variety of topics. And the objective of that is to have vendors that have already been vetted and whose pricing is reasonable. And we'll be initiating a full-time salary review this year. For the Your Career pillar, you can go to the next slide, please. We've made huge strides in this as well. Among them, we implemented the career development review process. This was a collaborative effort with the People and Belonging team and Ray Wurzla from the Engineering and Public Works Department. We initiated a new approach for the CAO's review, which ties into the career development process. And in support of these efforts, we brought the art of feedback training to people leaders. This approach recognizes that career development discussions are not about checking boxes, but about engaging in dialogue. We're updating our ADP system, and that's the system we use for payroll and recruitment, which we're expanding to use for career development reviews. To complement all of this, we now have regular employee orientation sessions for which we are receiving very favorable reviews. What's ahead? We will continue to expand the use of technology and create a digital onboarding process. We're fortunate to work on with such great IT talent, such as Kevin Bernard, who is our project manager for that project. We're also expanding a condensed version of the Art of Feedback session so that all staff have exposure to that type of training, and those sessions are taking place in the coming weeks. Next slide, please. Within the Team EG pillar, we initiated a Fire and Emergency Services Review Committee resulting from the review that was conducted last year. Together with Chief Brassard, I'll be coming back to Council at the end of March with an update on that work. We're working together with fire and emergency service captains to develop an onboarding approach for the new firefighters, and that's already been implemented. And we're working together with teams working together with teams also means that we need to clarify roles and responsibility, and that's why we've developed terms of reference for the extended management team and identified a chair, Chris Ross, who is leading that group. And finally, we updated departmental names. What's next? We're looking at training opportunities, including a leadership day for people leaders. And through the 2024 budget, we're also committed to developing a succession planning framework and to explore this future staffing needs of the organization. Measuring how we're doing is also important, and that's why we're undertaking an employee survey towards the end of this year. So initially that was going to be done in about a year or two from now, but we're fast forwarding an interim employee survey to see how we're doing based on what we've put forward with the employee engagement strategy. Next slide, please. I've touched on the policy and modernization initiatives through this presentation. I'll also pause on some of the work we're doing on the equity, diversity, and inclusion front. In addition to advocating for pregnancy and parental leave for our staff, we supported community-led initiatives, such as the Hanukkah event that happened in December, and most recently, the Lunar New Year event a few weeks ago. For Black History Month, we had a flag raising, and we invited a guest speaker to speak about Black History Month, and we also promoted the various events that the library hosted. And to help us advance the EDI work, we posted the EDI Engagement Officer position. That closes very soon, and that is also thanks to the funding Council approved in the 2024 budget. What's ahead? We're pleased to support and participate the Women's Day event that Rhonda Wilson and her team are organizing, and we're starting to put plans in place for Pride Month. The next, I'll just add to that, we're also looking at bringing in a speaker to talk about neurodiversity because April is Autism Awareness Month, and I think that that's another area that we would all benefit from. So there's multiple activities that are happening. I'm just touching on some of them. The next few slides provide a bit more of a people snapshot. The next slide, please. So by the numbers, we have 186 full-time employees and approximately 140 part-time and seasonal staff. I just want to make a note. At the last presentation, I said we had 185, and that was a little bit overstated because it included the library staff. So just to make sure we're course correcting, it's actually 186 full-time employees, and that does not include library staff. And the number the number that's quite telling is our voluntary turnover. I know that Council had asked this question in the past, and now we're just early into the year, but currently it's at 1.5%. And we know that the people who have left the organization have done so because they're actually physically moving out of the area and can no longer commute to EG. So they're very understandable. In 2023, that rate was 5.1%, and both those rates are still below the average that I had indicated at the last presentation rather. We're thrilled that when anyone chooses to work with the town, and so the next slide indicates the recruitments that we have put in place, and I'm not going to read all of the information there. Just simply some highlights of some of the positions that we have recruited. And I'm going to talk a little bit about volume in just a second, which is actually the next slide. So this slide is a snapshot of the council-approved positions in the 2024 budget. In just 6 weeks, about half of the positions are either posted or have been completed. In terms of overall recruitment, in 2023, we had a total of 113 employment and committee volunteer processes. And as of today, 31 employment or committee volunteer processes are already underway or completed. So we're well on our way to matching or beating the 113. And so that just provides a little bit of context in terms of the volume of recruitment that we do within the branch. Next slide. I'll close by talking about our commitment to communicate with and recognize our staff. Among our accomplishments, we resumed the Years of Service Awards with a breakfast event that happened in December, and we are now consistently sending new staff announcements during the first week of each month. Previously, those were ad hoc messages that were sent, and now we're trying to do our best to get those out on the Monday or Tuesday of every beginning of every month. It's also important to recognize the huge contributions of the Employee Plus team. This is a group of staff volunteers who continue to engage staff through events throughout the year. Most recently, the group hosted a Valentine's Day event at the Civic Center and the Operations Center. And just before the holidays, they hosted a lunch for all staff. Organizing these events on top of an already full workload speaks volumes of the staff who make that happen. I just want to acknowledge them. The Employee Plus team consists of Renju Sudhakaran, Chris Ross, Nicola Alston, Chris Burns, Jamal Massadeh, Chelsea Huber, John Ingham, Dana Tolles, Nev Webster, and members of the People and Belonging team. Going forward, we are looking at ways to improve internal communication. Some of those items will come forward in terms of improving internal electronic means of communication, and we're also exploring other ways to recognize staff. That brings me to the conclusion of the update on the EGU Belong Employee Engagement Strategy. I welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you so much. Another fantastic presentation. Can I have someone move receipt, please? Councillor Leahy. Is there any questions from members of council? Councillor Johns.
I guess I'm going to echo again. I was sitting here thinking while you were doing the presentation when we were first elected at the beginning of our term, and the conversations that were had about the opportunity to improve, like even from kind of my onboarding session, it was kind of felt like, here's your hat, here's your coat, see you later kind of thing. And I'm not sure it was because just on board kind of thing, but I jest. But what you and the team have done is very impressive. We were very vocal at a council table about what we wanted to help support your success with. And I'm just really proud. And like seeing those numbers on those sick days come down like that is, and the voluntary turnover, that's, congratulations and great work, so thank you.
Councillor Crone.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you to our presenter. Great information. Thank you for the update. Pleased to see the turnover rate is as low as it is. I think that speaks well to the leadership here. There's an old maxim in leadership that people don't leave organizations; they leave their leaders, and so that speaks well to you folks. I would just throw out for your consideration. I know technically up here we're not staff. But I saw some of those workshops that you were talking about. Boy, I'd like to take part in them. So if there's ever an opportunity to include us, don't forget your friends up here on the dais. We would love to participate. The gift of feedback, I'm sure that's, or the art of feedback is a good one. De-escalation, I could think of a few times I could have used that. I throw that out for your future consideration, not to forget about us. Thank you.
So through you, Madam Chair, we actually did a survey of council late last year, and we asked for feedback, and we are taking that into consideration. In fact, we're working with CAMH to produce a modified version of the de-escalation training specifically for members of council, and also looking at other opportunities based on the feedback that was provided. So your responses were well heeded, and we are moving forward with those recommendations.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Leahy.
Thank you very much. Through you, Madam Chair. My question is in relation to celebrating all of the awards and our award-winning staff that we receive here as a town. And in terms of having them visibly accessible when residents come into the building, et cetera, and their visibility on our town website, could you speak to how often residents have the opportunity to see these awards and celebrate with us the accomplishments of the staff?
Through you, Madam Chair, we don't have a rewards and recognition program per se. So we do have a plaque that we have on the hallway just here in the Civic Center with recognizes individuals, I believe, for 25 years of service, and so that's an opportunity. But we haven't fully developed a rewards and recognition program, and that is where we would be able to speak to how rewards are made public or shared when we receive awards for work that we've done as an organization. We would publicize that potentially through a news release or content on our website, and that does happen. But in terms of individual rewards, that's something that would be incorporated into a rewards and recognition program of work, which is part of our work plan.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor of receipt? And that's carried. Is there any further comments, Ms. Gandy, about corporate services?
No, thank you.
Okay. Any further questions from members of committee? Seeing none, I'll turn the chair back to you, Mr. Acting Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Carruthers. So next up is under Development Services, and I will pass the gavel over to Councillor Roy DiClemente to chair.
Thank you very much. It is 3:30. I'm just wondering, are people's whites of their eyes going yellow? Do we need a bio break, or shall we keep going? Members of committee, keep going? All right. So we have three items on our agenda today. The first one is a development service presentation regarding our complete community secondary plan. I'm going to ask Ms. Bégin to introduce this, but I will note that the OPOG, Mr. Ron Palmer, is in the house. So go ahead, Ms. Bégin.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, I believe the last time this matter came before this committee was to approve the terms of reference for the technical studies being undertaken by the Technical Advisory Committee. We have with us today Mr. Ron Palmer, who's going to talk about sort of where we are in terms of some of the thinking that's gone into working towards having sort of a preferred approach. There's different sort of planning methodologies and priorities that are being considered. And he'll also speak to the communication strategy, which was a request of council as part of resolution following the terms of reference discussion. I did also want to note the presence of Matthew Corey, who's in the audience as well today, who's working closely with the relevant landowners and are part of the team that's working collaboratively to bring this plan forward.
Thank you. So we're basically doing a bit of a check-in, take our temperature to make sure that we're heading in the right direction.
Correct.
Great. Take it away.
Thank you. Always great to be here in East Gwillimbury. It was a nice drive up today. Good to get out of the office. I am going to give you a bit of an overview as to where we are. And important to note that we're still early days in this process. We have been working, first of all, to put together a very large team of consultants covering a host of topics that will be important inputs to this planning exercise. But it's also really important to note that Margot touched on briefly, is this is a really interesting collaboration among a well-organized landowners group, council, staff, and the consulting team. So it's been an interesting start. And we are early days, but we have to start somewhere. So next slide, please. Important to remember, this is a very large planning area. It's not a concession block. It could be 3. It's big. The focus is really the interstitial areas between Holland Landing, Sharon, Queensville, to infill what was historically called the White Belt area. Now we're calling our plan the Complete Community Plan, but it's very large, 1,200 hectares in area, and it includes, as you may recall from the official plan, that we've subdivided this area into 6 community design plan areas. That's important, that I'll talk about a little later in the presentation. This is significant. It's a big change, and it won't build out next week. This could take 20 to 30 years to build out. And that's also recognizing that East Gwillimbury, in this urban agglomeration, still has significant development potential already approved that has not yet been achieved. So it's part of a much bigger urban center that is evolving here in East Gwillimbury. Next slide. The starting point for our work, as I had identified in my previous presentation, is going to be the principles that are established in your new official plan. There are 8 of them. They're quite broadly scoped, and some will apply to a greater extent than others. But nonetheless, it's important in preparing a justification for the approval of this secondary plan to touch on each of the 8 principles and how this plan responds to those principles. Certainly, this is not an agricultural plan, but it does affect existing agricultural uses. So the first 2 principles may not be fundamental to this plan, but there are certainly things to think about and how that affects the remaining rural agricultural community in East Gwillimbury. Complete communities, provincially defined phrase, making sure that we're not just building houses, that we're building a range of housing types, and that those housing types are fully supported by retail and service commercial uses, jobs, community facilities, schools, parks, etc. All of the things that a person needs to fulfill their daily life. Range and mix of housing types. Here in East Gwillimbury, we want to make sure that we're promoting single detached houses as well as other opportunities for higher density, higher intensity housing forms, semi-detached townhouses, and mid-rise apartments, low-rise apartments. We're looking for all of those things in a certain proportion that will get worked out as we go through the plan. Next slide. Fiscal responsibility is an important element of planning. We want to make sure that you're planning in step with your ability to pay for that growth or the developers to pay for that growth. However, all of that will fit together. We want to make sure that the phasing strategy is in line with the fiscal ability of the municipality. Connectivity, cohesiveness, vibrancy, high-quality urban design, these are important elements of a new community, and the new official plan articulates how this will be done, and we expect that the next phase of this articulation is the secondary plan, but that's not the last phase. Resiliency and sustainability, top of mind these days as we work towards our response to a changing climate. Lots of things that can be done in this plan, and I expect the entire plan will in some form be a response to the changing climate. You need to get denser. You need to be denser in a structure that supports alternative modes of transportation. You need to protect natural heritage features and their functions, and you need to promote and encourage green building technologies and green infrastructure. All of those things work together to be more sustainable, more resilient, and have an appropriate response to a changing climate over time. Economic growth is also important. These 6 areas, some of them do include opportunities for new employment lands, but don't forget, jobs also come with service, commercial, and retail uses, as well as community facilities and other institutional uses. So we'll be looking at opportunities within these planning areas to develop opportunities for work. We do need to look at the entire East Gwillimbury context when we're thinking about economic development, and certainly this secondary plan is part of that work. Next slide. Just a reminder, what is a secondary plan? And I think importantly on this slide, it should be, what is a secondary plan in East Gwillimbury? Because the process that was set up in the official plan is a little bit different than what I would call a traditional secondary plan. Certainly, a secondary plan is a statutory planning document requiring approval under the Planning Act. Currently, your approval authority is the Region of York. You, of course, get a chance to adopt in advance of that. Who knows what will happen over the course of this project, just like who knew what would happen over the course of the official plan. I think 4 changes during the official plan, a subsequent one. What's next? The idea of a secondary plan, and this is a graphic from another municipality, but it's intended to identify the primary land use pattern. Where do the houses go? Where do the retail, service, commercial uses go? Where do the industrial business park areas go? What's the road pattern? Mostly the primary road pattern. We don't get into the local road pattern. How do we protect the environment? What are the policies that we're going to use to get us to the next steps of the planning approval process? So all of those things get put together, created on a map, along with a set of area-specific policies. In this case, your official plan is new. So we will be relying on to a significant extent, on the policy framework that has already been established, with area-specific policies that deal with any particular issues or opportunities that arise within this secondary plan area. Next slide. You're going to hear me say this many, many times. This is not the end. This is the beginning of a very significant piece of work. The secondary plan sets the stage for the future urban development of these lands. Following approval of the secondary plan, each of the 6 community design areas will be required to prepare a community design plan. A community design plan gets the form of development into a substantially higher level of detail to the point where that plan becomes the basis for subsequent draft plans of subdivision and then zoning bylaw approval. Community design plans are non-statutory. However, they do require council adoption. They will also be supported by a whole host of detailed technical studies that are even more detailed than the ones that are being prepared for this secondary plan. After that, then the developer, the individual landowner, will be in a position to prepare draft plans of subdivision. Again, those require council adoption. And then, of course, zoning bylaw is the penultimate opportunity for council approval, and that requires a full statutory public process. Council approves zoning bylaws, not the region. In some instances, site plan approval will also be required for the larger, more intense forms of development. The message here is, again, this is not the end. This is the beginning of a very significant process with a lot of work that needs to be done before a house is built. It's not going to happen next week. It's likely to be quite some time from today. Next slide. So to begin our work, after we assembled a team and thought about a work program and started talking about timing and a consultation process, we thought it was time to put pen to paper and start thinking about what I'm going to call and I'm going to use these words very specifically, an emerging preferred plan. That does not say the final plan. That is a plan that we're using to inform our team and to talk to you about where we think we might go. It will change, it will evolve, and it will become more detailed over time, but it's never finished until it's finished, and that's approval at the region. So lots of opportunity for adjustment. I expect it will evolve dramatically over time with input from the public, from you, from approval agencies, from staff, and from our consulting team. But as I said, we needed to start somewhere, and I'm going to tell you kind of the thought process that we went through before we put pen to paper. In terms of the natural heritage system, always the first layer that goes on the plan. To date, we've used the existing natural heritage system that is in the official plan, notwithstanding that that is currently being studied in detail by a subconsultant, an expert in natural heritage systems, and we will respond to the outcome of that work when it is ready. The primary road network is articulated through the current transportation master plan, and we've simply utilized that current master plan as the foundation for the enhanced primary road network that goes through the secondary plan area. We've made an assumption, although it doesn't show up on a plan, that the minor road network will take advantage of connections with the existing minor road network where that is possible. That is an important, potentially controversial statement, but the reason we are saying it now is so that everybody can think about that, and keeping in mind that the Transportation Master Plan connects the new primary road network with the existing primary road network. So there is already the intent to connect. The parkland system is an interesting one. We've taken the assumption that you're going to get 5% of the land area in public parkland dedicated to you. That's going to be modified somewhat. You may do a new parkland dedication study taking advantage of some new elements in the Planning Act. That requires a separate study and a new bylaw. That could get you, in some instances, up to 10%. Employment generating land uses, commercial and industrial uses, you only get 2% of the gross land area. So we just made the assumption that you're going to get 5%, and that's good enough for this scale of planning at this point in the process. What's interesting about that is that we're trying to use the public parkland dedication element to do a couple of things for us. First of all, we want to make sure that each neighborhood has an appropriate park system. It's important for new residents to have access to parks. That's a fundamental principle. We're also taking the opportunity to try and connect disconnected parts of the natural heritage system with public parkland. That's a bit of an opportunity because you have a lot of fragmented elements of your natural heritage system that could be connected. And we can use parks, may require some innovative design techniques to permit it to function both as an active park system and a functional connector between pieces of the natural heritage system. But nonetheless, we need to start showing that now as a concept to be carried forward as we work through the process. We're also using the park system adjacent to school sites and taking the opportunity where a school, a park, and the natural heritage system are in proximity that those things can connect together. Housing mix, I talked about a little bit already. I don't see necessarily a major opportunity for high-rise. And we may all have a different idea of what a high-rise is, but we're focused on low-rise development and mid-rise development. And that includes low-rise and mid-rise apartment buildings, as well as more traditional single semis and townhouses. We do need to have a robust mix of housing. If there comes opportunities for high-rise, we can explore that. However, the big structure of East Gwillimbury, the most dense, the tallest elements should really be focused in your two major transit station areas that are down in the Green Lane secondary plan area. Mixed uses. We have identified on the plan, and I'm going to show you in a minute, a primary center. What was really interesting, because this never happens in planning, is that if you squint your eyes, it's about right in the middle of the secondary plan area and the urban area in general. We'll see that needs to be refined and considered in terms of topography and other opportunities for adjacency. But we see the primary road network and this urban center as the primary location for mixed-use opportunities, including significant mid-rise residential opportunity, as well as a range of retail, service, commercial, and community facilities. It seems to be a logical location, providing good accessibility, and hopefully, in the longer term, a much more robust, connected transit system. Public service facilities, we do have a sub-consultant who's focused specifically on the need for and appropriate location and sizing for community facilities. I know that East Gwillimbury has a tremendous reputation as having great community facilities, and that will continue. And we have the opportunity to make sure we're planning for that and making sure that they're the right size, the right number, and in the right locations. Schools, we are making some assumptions about schools at this point. 1 secondary school, 6 elementary schools. We do have the school boards on our technical advisory committee, and as we go through the process, they will be giving us more clear direction as to what they believe they need as this community grows out. In terms of density, because that's a fundamental element of provincial planning, regional planning, and your own official plan, we've taken the same emerging preferred concept and applied 2 density assumptions, one at 60 persons and jobs per hectare, one at 70 persons and jobs per hectare. And I'm going to show you the numbers at the end, but they generate a lot of development opportunity. My understanding today is that the region is looking for 70 persons and jobs per hectare. Next slide. So this is a little hard to see. The dark green is the natural heritage system. The light green is where we're suggesting elements of public parkland could be located. And you'll see that there aren't many that are simply left alone in the middle of a development block. Most are attempting to connect elements of the natural heritage system or make the natural heritage system bigger. This is a really important principle. I can't take a dark green pencil and start drawing lines to connect it without a strategy of acquisition. You get the dark green today, or a public agency can get it at no cost. Usually the Conservation Authority, could also be the town. But you can't get it for free. You have to acquire it if it's not, in fact, a natural heritage feature. So the idea of the light green as connector is to use land that you're going to get at no cost and use it for both recreational and environmental purposes. That's kind of a principle that we're working with. If you look very carefully, you can see that there's quite a few opportunities to do that. And I think it's a very reasonable thing to do as a starting point. Next slide. These are the centers and corridors. You can see the primary road network. This is similar to what's in your official plan for the other urban elements of this growth area. The area right in the center is where we're suggesting an urban center could be. And again, the corridors in the center would be the focus of mixed-use development, mid-rise development, community facilities, and so on. Next slide. Adding in the residential areas, these are starting to pop out a little more. You can see that what we're doing today is identifying in the yellow what would be single semis with some towns, and the orange, which would be towns, low-rise and mid-rise apartments. So again, focusing on the corridors for the massing of intensity of development, which is the right thing to do in support of future transit opportunity. Next slide. In the dark blue are the areas of this secondary plan exercise that are proposed for employment land. These build upon existing employment areas adjacent to the 404 and also adjacent to the planned Bradford bypass, which is another great employment area opportunity in East Gwillimbury. There are areas that are still white within this urban settlement area, and those are, for the most part, towards the northern quarter of the development area. Those are not yet part of your urban area. They're still within the settlement area, but they have not been taken out of the white belt yet. You could see that the logic would suggest that a vast majority of those lands are likely to be considered for employment. And that would make some sense when you see the numbers. Next slide. So these are the numbers. And they're pretty big. Under the 60 persons and jobs per hectare, we're almost 40,000 people and around 8,000 jobs. At 70 persons and jobs per hectare, we're even bigger. 46,000 people, 9,000 jobs. This is a big development opportunity. It's going to take a long time, but it's important to set in place the right framework for development. Make sure that it happens in a logical, reasonable way, that facilities and infrastructure are provided in tandem with growth, and that the municipality is not overwhelmed by constant growth. It's going to take a long time. Phasing of development in consideration of all the potential you have in Green Lane, as well as the remaining potential in Queensville, Sharon, and Holland Landing, means that there's a lot of development opportunity. Phasing is important, and that's going to be an interesting conversation that we're not quite ready to have yet, but we will. Next slide. I'd like to say that this is the final work program and the final engagement strategy, but it's not. Those things are still evolving. As we start thinking about timing and integrating that with some of the review times that some of the agencies have suggested they need, as well as putting in place a more detailed consultation strategy to make sure that we're getting to council at the key decision-making points, to keep you involved all the way through, to make sure the public is involved. and of course, to make sure the agencies get the information they need and have the time necessary to review it. So this is where we're at today. It will evolve, and I will have a more detailed one for you next time. But nonetheless, we're anticipating about 4 phases with multiple opportunities for the Technical Advisory Committee, which is, I don't know, when we do those meetings, it seems like there's 50 people there, which is all of our sub-consultants, all of the agencies, city, town staff. This does not say necessarily where we're going to talk to council, but we do need to integrate that in so that we know when we're coming to talk to you, when we need to talk to you. It talks about the statutory public process. We know we need to establish an indigenous engagement program. And all of those things are works in progress, notwithstanding that we've embarked on the first steps. Part of that is the discussion with you today. And upcoming, if we can go to the next slide. After today, I'll be, with Matt's help, doing the same presentation to the landowners group. Also, and I just heard the date before I came in here, I think March 21st. Is it March 21st? I think it's March 21st for a public workshop where we're coming up here. We're going to do an afternoon session and an evening session. I'll be giving the same presentation, and we'll be talking to the public, giving them an opportunity to ask questions. Usually what happens is there's a formal part, and then people come up and mingle around and speak to us over a map for a couple of hours during the course of the afternoon and the evening. So we're looking forward to that. After that, we will make some adjustments to the plan and start preparing what we'll call the preferred plan, which is after emerging, but before the secondary plan. That will allow us to refine numbers. Again, the numbers are really important for the sub-consultants so that they can understand how to do planning for transportation, servicing, community facilities, and so on. That work has begun. So we have begun. But the most important message today is we are not done. There's going to be lots of opportunity for us to continue our conversation. Absolutely, public involvement is important, and that will continue. And we're working with the landowners group, a massive technical advisory committee, and we go forward. After we prepare what I'm going to call the preferred plan, after the public consultation, we'll be back to talk about the plan and probably the first draft of the secondary plan, which will be the policy framework. So with that, I'm happy to try and answer any questions. I will say, I hope you all have my email and my phone number. I'm happy to talk about this at any time with any of you. However you would prefer to do that.
Thank you. See, this is why I asked if you guys wanted a break beforehand, because I knew that this would be very, very meaty. Thank you very much. When I saw the presentation, I was a little bit worried about how we were going to engage with all of those maps, but I wanted to thank you for being very methodical and laying those out in a very, very strict fashion, and it really helped me get my head around it. So thank you. Members of committee, any questions for Mr. Palmer? Go ahead, Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Palmer, for answering all of my questions. I had them all written out here and just checking them off as we went through. I had one question about not seeing high-rise on here when you're talking about the climate emergency and that sort of thing, but looking at your map, the transit hubs make the most sense for that. That's not part of this process right now, but I think it's something that we shouldn't just wait to see it happen. There's got to be a way for us to be pushing for that, because once those transit hubs, once that land gets built on, we can't come back and put in a high-rise. So if that's where we want high-rises, then, I mean, obviously outside of this process, but how do we get there, right? So that's just a comment. I liked your comments about connecting the Natural Heritage Network. I think that is so important to sustainability, to make sure that those are all connected, and I see what you're trying to do in there. I wish we could do more, but your comment about we have to be prepared to buy the land is very important. One comment about when we talk about the landowners group, we have to remember that there are landowners here that are affected by this plan who are not part of that group. So when we talk about the relevant landowners, it's a little bit of a slap in the face to our residents who live there, that the only people who are relevant are the developers from out of town, not the residents who are currently living on the land. So I think that we need to really think about those residents that are impacted by this, and giving the developers, you know, a seat at the table while calling the residents irrelevant, I think is really hard when we have to talk to the residents about how their land is being zoned. So obviously the developers own the largest portion of the land, and they should have a seat at the table, and we should be consulting with them. But we have to remember that this plan affects a lot of individual residents throughout our town, and how we are connecting with them when their land is within this plan. So very different. Other people who are not part of the secondary plan, they still want to know what's happening in their town. But the people who are actually getting zoning put on their land should be reached out to in a meaningful way, and not just the developers. So I think that's a comment that I would like to have your feedback on, how we are
Sure.
reaching out to residents.
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't think I called them relevant, because that would imply others are irrelevant, and that's not true. I'm happy to set up an approach with the help of staff to make sure that any landowner within the study area has an opportunity to tell us what they're thinking.
Excellent. Good.
I don't know the best way to do that, but we'll have that conversation.
Excellent. That's
Because
what-
they are relevant,
Yeah.
and just as relevant as everyone else.
Thank you. It wasn't you, it was the setup to this that they were referred to as relevant landowners in the landowners group. So then my last question just is around the community design plan. In your crystal ball, when do you think we would be looking at that? I know it's a long shot, but you would know so much more than I would, so best guess.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm sure they're doing them right now.
Okay,
Some of the landowners think that we're going to be finished in July. And that's not the case. So part of this plan, which is to set the stage for subsequent approval processes, needs to be pretty clear. Now, you cannot stop a landowner from doing the work. And when it comes in, they're non-statutory, so there's no timeline, but they need to be told that there has to be a logical sequence of events. Absolutely, you can review them and approve them all at the same time, but that does not imply that they've been given any capacity in the sewage treatment pipe, or that the pipe has to be built in different directions at different times. So the approval process is one thing, but the actual assigning of capacity in the, fundamentally the sewage treatment system, is in your hands to a large extent. And I'm sure you're going to hear a lot about who should go first and why they should go first. But at the end of the day, I want to make sure that the plan has enough direction in it to help you make logical, informed decisions about phasing.
thank you. What would be the rationale for approving plans ahead of allocation? And my question comes from land that had been approved 20 years ago that's only getting built on now, and those plans aren't necessarily what we would do in 2024. So
Yeah, again, approval is an interesting word for a community design plan, non-statutory.
okay,
So the status of it is, yeah, go ahead, do your draft plan subdivision, apply for zoning, but we're not going to give you, or we're going to give you zoning with a hold symbol. And the criteria for the removal of the hold are these 5 things that you have to do first. At the end of the day, most developers don't want to build an old plan. They want to be up to date. And I can just tell you, I've been sitting at the same corner in Toronto for 30 years, and we used to fight about 18-story buildings. Now we fight about 100-story buildings. So developers evolve, so they don't want an old plan sitting around. No. There's nothing to say, just to throw something out at you. A community design plan approval from council has a sunset clause. Says if you haven't done anything to further the approval, you got to do it again. I'm not saying I'm going to do that, but it's something that we have to talk about in terms of making sure you have mechanisms to get the best plan at the right time.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I think you may find that there is a great deal of appetite for a sunset clause, because at this point, we have, as a community, we are seeing houses be built that were approved in the 90s. And so it actually did happen here.
Oh, it happens everywhere.
And
Absolutely.
We've tilted at that windmill for over a decade to say, why aren't you updating your plan? Well, it's a good one. I'm going to build all of this. And we're saying, but times have changed.
Yeah. I'm old enough to remember the Planning Act had a sunset clause in it at one point, and it was removed. But this is non-statutory, so I think the toolbox is full of everything today until we get a chance to have that conversation and refine the box.
Thank you. Members of committee, anything else? I did want to make a comment about, well, first of all, to Councillor Carruthers' point, I think that your public workshop at the end of March is an excellent opportunity to find a way to engage those landowners who are residents and landowners, who should be involved in the long-term planning for their properties and an awareness. I would encourage us to make sure that the interchange on the 404-400 link at Second Concession is included in our mapping, because it comes and goes, and I think we need to be really consistent that it's there, so that it's a visual reminder for us that's happening. And my comment would also be, around that 5% of parkland and the interplay with the natural heritage area. We often see, or I have in the course of my time on council, had landowners come to me and say, well, that's natural heritage, so that'll be where the park goes. And I resist that in saying, that's not where the stormwater management pond goes. That's not where the park goes. That's natural heritage. And if you're going to be giving us parkland, it's going to be actual parkland and not natural heritage land. So I want to make sure that we're very mindful of that as well as we work through this process. So I did not ask for a motion to receive, but I will now, if anyone would like to make it. Councillor Crone, thank you. Anything further from members of committee? Seeing none, all those in favor? That motion is carried, and thank you very much, Mr. Palmer.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
All right, next item on our agenda is a memorandum regarding the Shades of Hope and their wildlife rehabilitation year-end report. May I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Leahy. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you. And the third item on our agenda is a memorandum from Development Services on the Ontario Building Faster Fund, tracking our housing supply progress. May I have a motion to receive? Moved by Councillor Johns. Ms. Bégin, would you care to introduce this one?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, I'm going to ask our new Director of Planning Policy and Growth Management, Jack Kubrick, to speak to this, but essentially it's just to provide a little bit of insight into how our housing progress is being tracked, and there was some, just to make it clear, there are two funds. There is a federal fund that some municipalities applied for and participated in. We're really focusing on the provincial Building Faster Fund in this memo. So I'll turn it over to Jack. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that. So as you heard, this is an excuse me, a memo to update council on the Ontario's Building Faster Fund. And once again, it is a provincial funding program that's provided to municipalities, being made available to municipalities. In August of last year, 2023, the Ontario government launched the Building Faster Fund. It is a 3-year, $1.2 billion program, provide new funding based on performance against provincial housing targets. The fund is intended to provide approximately $400 million in 3-year stages. $400 million a year for 3 years to municipalities who are able to meet their provincial housing target. And municipalities that reach 80% of their annual housing targets each year will become eligible for funding based on their share of the overall goal of $1.5 million homes for Ontario. Municipalities that exceed their target will receive a bonus on top of their allocation, and there are now 50 municipalities which have been assigned housing targets by the province. Funding from the Building Faster Fund can be directed towards housing enabling infrastructure and other related costs that support community growth. Municipal performance is intended to be evaluated by comparing municipalities' number of housing starts against those respective housing targets, and we'll get into those targets in a bit. Currently, the housing tracker relies on monthly housing data. The provincial housing tracker actually relies on federal tracking by the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation, CMHC. And CMHC defines housing starts as the beginning of construction work on the building where a dwelling unit will be located. So using the CMHC definition of housing starts, it measures performance based on activity that is over and beyond the application and the permitting process that we are in charge of. So an important consideration is that municipalities have limited ability to influence the timing or pace of construction once a permit has been issued, and in fact, it's not uncommon for building permits to periodically be revoked due to inactivity on a builder's part. And the current iteration of the Building Faster Fund Housing Tracker illustrates that our town, the town of East Gwillimbury, has not met its housing target for 2023. In conclusion, however, it's based on data or a data set that may not, in our opinion, accurately reflect the town's actual contribution towards achieving its housing target. And I'll go into that in a bit as well. So the ministry's website indicates that it does indicate that there are other housing types which are eligible and encouraged by provincial policies. And they may in time be, in fact, added to that tracker in the coming months following consultation that's supposed to take place with municipalities. So in that, hopefully, is intended to give us a more kind of a broad base of housing starts to draw upon. So we believe that the inclusion of these new things, such as long-term care homes or secondary suites, would be appropriate as it more accurately measures municipal performance against factors that are in our control. So to date, municipalities have not been provided with a clear understanding, unfortunately, from the province as to what specific data the province is using from CMHC to input their housing tracker. So we've not been able to receive that from CMHC. An excerpt from the Ministry's Building Faster Fund Housing Tracker has been provided within the memo for Council's review. And as you can see, it shows the town of East Gwillimbury as a summary of activity for our town, and how we have not met that housing target for 2023. Our own building permit issuance data shows that in 2023, we did in fact issue 200 residential Part 9 building permits. In addition to this, we've also provided 16 accessory dwelling units which were constructed in 2023. So already we see a discrepancy from our numbers and that which CMHC has provided to the province. It's also worthy to note that a further 204 independent suites and assisted care suites were anticipated to come online in 2023 as part of the Riviera retirement home facility. Occupancy was planned in September of last year, was bumped to December of last year, and then further deferred to this year. These are business decisions or decisions of occupancy outside of the control outside of our control or our ability to influence. So to include these units in total with the 200 Part 9 building permits and the 16 accessory dwelling units, we would be at 420 new residential units that we were in control of bringing online last year, which would represent 129% of the target of the assigned housing target that the province has provided to us. So while these statistics presently are not captured by CMHC, we do believe that the total of 420 units offers a much more accurate representation of what the town and staff are contributing to advancing the availability of new homes in East Gwillimbury. And the underrepresentation of East Gwillimbury's contribution to construction does have financial impacts to the town. Staff estimate that the municipality would be eligible for approximately $1 million in funding if 2023 target is met, and an accurate and meaningful definition that captures all housing types is therefore critical for us and our ability to impact and deliver on infrastructure related to housing. So overall, there exists a lack of clarity amongst not only amongst our municipalities in York Region and others as well. There's 50 on the list that have been assigned housing targets with respect to the methodology for measuring housing starts. The Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing has acknowledged that not all housing starts have been captured, and they do include to open that up and broaden it, as I mentioned to you all. So we do look forward to working with the ministry on these issues and have them flagged for them, and also have them flagged the matter for MPP Mulrooney's awareness as well. And staff will continue to seek opportunities to provide input and obtain clear direction from the ministry as to the process for tracking and reporting on the provision of new homes in East Gwillimbury. So despite significant infrastructure challenges related to wastewater servicing in the town, we are working closely with the development community to refine and expedite housing through the development process, and the way we work with them through our approvals to impact the availability of housing. So and hopefully as the refinement of the Building Faster Fund methodology advances and efforts to expand wastewater servicing progress, we believe that we'll be able to demonstrate success in achieving achieving provincial objectives, and hopefully those provincial objectives do reflect the efforts of staff in the community at large. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members of committee. Go ahead, Councillor Crone.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to our presenter. Thank you for that update. I am concerned that we have a disagreement over the numbers. What steps are we taking to put forward our case that we've actually hit our numbers? What are we doing with the province to express our case?
I think Ms. Bégin would like to take that one. I believe this is where we pound on the table.
Thank you, too, Madam Chair. I mean, it's definitely an item to be addressed with the upcoming meeting with MPP Mulrooney, and it's also been flagged. There was a session that CMHC held recently to sort of talk through their methodology, but what transpired was we did have staff attend, but they were really speaking to the federal program, not the provincial program. So there's a real, I think we need to think about how we communicate this, and advocate for something that accurately measures. If the objective was to reduce red tape and to make the process faster, we've done that. We're working as hard as we can to continue to do that. But so the metrics need to measure things that are actually within a municipality's sphere of influence in order to be fair and equitable. And obviously, there's some significant financial implications at stake. So I think once we hear back from the feedback from MPP Mulroney, that'll give us perhaps some direction in terms of further advocacy that we could undertake.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to express that, anything that we can do on this side of the table to help out, please don't be afraid to call out. I think MPP Mulroney is a good place to start. In my days in business development, I always prided myself in hitting targets, so there's a lot of money on the table here, so let's make sure we can plead our case. Thanks.
Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you for this update. It's good to know where we're standing and where the issues are. Can you help me understand, when we're talking about the beginning of construction work, pouring concrete, yet when we talk about Rivera, we're talking about occupancy. So what is the difference? Why are we're talking about beginning of construction work and something else we're talking about occupancy?
Ms. Béger?
Through you, Madam Chair, the distinction is what CMHC measures is the pouring of a foundation, which, as Jack mentioned, is outside of a municipal's ability to influence. But what we were talking about with respect to creating homes for people and the efforts that we can undertake to advance that, we collectively within the organization did everything we could do to advance the ability of Rivera to be able to offer new homes for residents. But there's only so much we can do. We've done everything on the list, if you will. But then because of a sale and some other business decisions, that process has been delayed. So it just speaks to the idea that there are factors that are outside of a municipality's ability to influence, and so not being able to report on what we've actively done to advance the availability of new homes is a challenge. And just wanted to reiterate too that I think it's also worth noting that this target was assigned on October 29th, 2023. So this is an annual target that was signed very late in the fourth quarter of the year. So the province have themselves acknowledged that this is a process that's still in development, yet the financial impact is real.
If I can have a follow-up to that, I appreciate everything that you're saying and that the process is flawed and that I'm just trying to get an understanding about why we wouldn't be looking at when Rivera's foundation was poured, if that's what the benchmark that they're looking at. And I think that was before 2023.
Through you, Madam Chair, it was, but again, a foundation isn't a place to live. So if the objective is to create new homes, new places for people and families to live, then it would, the point we're trying to make is that wouldn't it make more sense to measure within the context of what we can influence and what we can action as a municipality when we create new spaces for people and families to live. And so I would say that the foundation, not only the pouring of the foundation is not only outside of our ability to influence from a timing perspective, but it's not necessarily an indication that somebody lives there or that a new home has been completed and occupied.
But we're also saying occupancy is outside of our control as well. So they're both outside of our control. I just feel like you said it was a business decision, wasn't it?
There's three different points here. There's the pouring, there's the issuance of the building permit, there's the pouring of the foundation, and then there's the issuance of the occupancy permit, which it actually signals somebody is able to live here. This is a new space that's been created. Go ahead, Ms. Béger.
So yes, certainly, just to clarify through you, Madam Chair, occupancy is within the municipality's ability to influence because it's us that grants that permit. But even in those instances where we've gone to the end of that process, there still may be factors outside of our influence that lead, whether it's a developer or in this case a business owner, to make a choice not to proceed further. So, we've gone as far as we can go. Thanks.
Mr. Valchich, you had indicated that you wanted to speak.
Madam Chair, just to make one quick comment. Part of what we're dealing with is a bit of a transitional matter that they're picking a starting point at how do you start to do this housing count. Over the course of time, doesn't really matter at what point in the process you count it, everything gets included. But because this is a transition year, and as the GM said, the first year, the program was announced sort of 3/4 of the way through the year. It's our view that just in this transitional period, our sense of what we've been able to contribute to additional housing stock is higher than by virtue of the CMHC definition. But over the course of time, this conversation becomes not necessarily material, but in this transition period, transitioning into this program, it's probably a relevant talking point.
I think the reality is that when the province came to us and said, here's your housing target, can you meet it? We said yes, because we thought we had a 10-year window, not to parse it into annual things because of all of these transitory and uncontrollable things. That over the course of 10 years, absolutely we can create that many homes. But can we in a 3-month period or in a 6-month period? That is, at the whim of the market, quite frankly. So I think for us, it's the 420 versus the 315 argument, and at this point we need to be advocating for our ability to be able to tap into that fund because we are hitting the long-term plan. We absolutely can hit that. So I guess, staff, you've indicated that there's a meeting upcoming with the MPP. Would it be helpful if we drafted a resolution or a letter to her, or perhaps there's something that could go to the ministry or to York Region and AMO to kind of bring attention to this and start that conversation? I'll let Councillor Johns go ahead, and then staff, perhaps you can comment.
Yeah, just from a feedback perspective, senior management team brought forward specific items. Thank you, Councillor Roy DiClemente, for your specific items, and Councillor Crone as well. I was just informed that Ms. Casey has now sent the notes to the MPP's office in advance to make sure that the staff had prepped Ms. Mulrooney for the meeting on Friday, and so those comments are there now, and then the follow-up will happen on Friday. And so I just wanted to provide that context in as you are discussing the opportunity to further the conversation.
So this memorandum went to the MPP's office?
No, but there was some specific items regarding the housing targets in the bill, but it wasn't this specific memorandum.
Okay, so at this point, what I might suggest then is we're going to receive this, and are we going to ask staff to report back following the advocacy work with the MPP? Would that be appropriate? Staff? I'm seeing nods. Councillor Johns, this was your motion. You okay with that? Sure. Madam Clerk, you've noted that as well. I noticed that you had put your microphone on briefly. Did you want to add anything?
Through you, Acting Mayor. I will just communicate that, we do meet as a group. The commissioners and directors of planning and development do meet as a group on a regular basis. They are, of all the regional municipalities, I believe, all with the exception of 2 perhaps right now do not meet their assigned targets. So it's a common concern for everyone. And certainly we do feel a better measure would be something that is within our control. But further to that as well, my understanding is as a group of commissioners and directors, they will establish a kind of a common ground as to how to move forward as well in one voice on this.
Thank you. Councillor Leahy, you had a comment or a question.
Yes, thank you very much, through you, Madam Chair. My question is with regard to the whole area of statistics, because you've made it clear that there are varying statistics depending on their origins. So recently we had a visit from MPAC, and they provided other statistics in terms of communities that were the fastest growing, and they measured that by building permits. And in the top 10 growing communities, East Gwillimbury wasn't listed on those according to building permits. So my first first question is about the number of building permits and if it is on a downward decline in the town of East Gwillimbury. And my second question is, because for over more than a year now, we've been touting ourselves as the, and I quote, the fastest growing municipality in all of Canada, unquote. That's what we promote ourselves as. And so I would like to know, in sincerity, is this an accurate sentence that we are, a statement that we are making? Are we, in fact, the fastest growing municipality in all of Canada, or should we stop saying that?
Mr. Valchich, I know that you wanted to provide some clarity on this one. I think it was the census that we were referring to, and I'll welcome you or Mr. Marshall even to add context, please.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So it is an accurate statement, but the statement specifically was the census reported 44% growth. So compared to where you started, we were 44% larger at the end of that census period. Other organizations like major cities would have issued more permits and would have had more permitted, more housing, but percentage change compared to where they started, which was much lower. So in terms of growth, the change within our municipal boundaries, we changed by the highest percentage of any Canadian municipality in that census period. That is an accurate statement, but that doesn't translate into, did we issue more permits than the City of Toronto? That would be a very different set of numbers.
I think Mr. Valchich, it also refers to MPAC uses assessment value. So it's a question of, they may have issued more permits, but it was worth more money. We may have grown from an assessment value since 2016, but they're not tracking that growth because they're not looking at assessment values that are recent. So we're looking at population numbers versus a value of property in the municipality. They're very different statistics. Go ahead.
Madam Chair, yeah, and likewise on the assessment side, when you start with an assessment the size of Toronto, their assessment change, it's a very, very small percentage in change that would generate massive assessment changes, whereas because we're starting with a smaller base, our percentage change would be multiple times that before we would catch up to what you'd see as an assessment change in a large city. So just for clarity, when the census numbers were released on population, they were talking about percentage change over that census period, and East Gwillimbury was in excess of 40% growth, which is significant compared to the rate of change in municipalities across Canada.
Thank you for clarifying that, Mr. Valchich. Councillor Leahy, did you have something further?
Yes, one further question. And so what years was that based on, and does it continue to be accurate in 2024? Or should we consider adding some adjective to that statement that we're the fastest growing municipality in Canada? Should we be saying the fastest growing municipality with population in Canada? Or I would like to have some clarification so that everybody has the same understanding of this statement that we're making.
Ms. Gandhi.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. So we have been using consistently as a boilerplate to our news releases and in our website content that Canada is the fastest growing community according to the 21 census data. And so that speaks to the period between 2016 and 2021. When Milton was the fastest growing municipality in Canada, they used that term until it was the next census, and somebody else got to take the lead as the fastest growing municipality. But we're using data that is produced by the Government of Canada through their official census source. And so we do use that content on our boilerplates for our news releases and our job postings and other documents that specifically cite Census Canada as the source of that information.
Thank you, Ms. Gandhi. And isn't it ironic that Canada's fastest growing municipality hasn't met its housing target? Anyway, be that as it may, Councillor Carruthers, go ahead, please.
Thank you. You mentioned that we would like to use a metric that's within our control, and obviously we all agree about that. What would be the metric that would be within our control? What do you think this should be judged by?
Ms. Bégin?
Through you, Madam Chair, I think this is part of an ongoing conversation with our regional counterparts, but I would suggest that it's probably a mix of different metrics in terms of processing time, a number of applications that have been reviewed and approved, permits issued, occupancy permits issued, those types of things, and that would all speak to our ability to influence the speed and responsiveness, which I understand to be the objective here.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion moved by Councillor Johns, which has been amended accordingly based on our discussion today. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you. That brings us to the end of our prepared agenda. Ms. Bégin, did you have anything further to add?
Nothing further this time. Thank you, Madam
Okay,
Chair.
members of committee, anything you'd like to raise under this area? Seeing none, I'll turn the chair back to you, Councillor Johns.
Thank you, Councillor Roy D. Clementi. That takes us to item K, Engineering and Public Works, and I'll turn it over to Councillor Leahy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. The one item on our agenda today is a report regarding the assumption of West Holland Landing Trunk Sanitary Sewer and Water Main. Can I have a mover for this, please? Thank you, Councillor Crone. The report is moved by Councillor Crone. And General Manager Molinari, do you have any comments you'd like to add?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Yeah, this is an administrative report to assume the West Holland Landing Trunk Sewer and Water Main subsequent to its construction by the West Holland Landing Developers Group. The infrastructure is located on Holland Landing Road and Bradford Street. The work was completed to the town's satisfaction. It's in use and it's ready for formal assumption at this time. Happy to answer any questions.
Yes, thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments from members of committee? Seeing none, I will call it to a vote. All those in favor of the motion as presented? And the motion is carried. The General Manager, are there any other members with questions for the committee or for General Manager Molinari? Seeing none, I'll pass the chair back to Acting Mayor Johns, and with the request that the following items on the agenda after item K, that we look at them individually, please.
Sure. So, item L, Administration, that's under, I'm chairing that section. Yeah, Councillor Leahy.
Thank you very much. I have a question for our CAO. Last week, we received a presentation and educational workshop from the Integrity Commissioner, and I'm interested in knowing if there is a follow-up plan in place that staff are organizing to have a session for the public from the Integrity Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, thank you for the question. I don't know if the town solicitor wants to add anything to this, but what I can tell you is staff are continuing to have conversations with the Integrity Commissioner about not only the the education session from last week, but what are the appropriate next steps and what's the best manner in which to perhaps continue with that information and educational effort. And so there will be more coming back on that, but we don't yet have a defined plan or schedule. We're working on next steps as we speak. So I don't know if the solicitor or clerk have anything to add to that, but if not, then that's where we're at. But we will have more to say on that in the near future.
Any other items under administration? Moving to finance. It's also my area that I'm chairing. Any items under finance? Seeing none. Now moving to Parks, Recreation, and Culture. Councillor Crone. There's none on the agenda. Do you have anything?
Not for me.
Okay. Any other members of the committee? Seeing none. Item O takes us to Fire and Emergency Services. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Johns. Although we have nothing prepared on the agenda today, Chief Broussard did have some comments he wanted to bring forward for committee. Chief Broussard?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. You were so efficient last week that when you passed the bylaws, we neglected to introduce Stephen Cook to you as our acting deputy chief. And so I just wanted to take a moment to share a little bit about Steve with you. Steve is one of our longest serving paid firefighters, 20 years of service with East Gwillimbury, and he was paid on call for 10 of those as well. He's been a full-time firefighter since 2008 with us, promoted to captain 12 years ago, and is serving quite proudly there. He lives in Sharon with his wife and daughter, and has a large farm to the south of us. A little known fact about Steve is that he's a professional, or was a professional motorcycle racer, and raced in the Formula, Extreme, and Super Bike classes. So, my pleasure to introduce Stephen to you.
Move to receive.
Okay, we have Councillor Roy DeClemente to receive. All in favor of the update? And that will be carried. Anything further, Chief? Anything from committee for the Chief? Councillor Leahy.
Thank you very much. I wanted to recognize that routinely the majority of calls in the fire department are often not fires, but since you've been here for less than 2 months, the fire department's been extremely busy. So with 3 significant fires that you have communicated to us as council. And so I was just looking for perhaps some overall comments about if there's any reasoning behind that, obviously what you can share as appropriate, but any comments about in your position as the interim fire chief with regard to the recent fires that the fire department has responded to?
Well, thank you for the question, and through you, Mr. Chair. It's been all of 8 weeks for me now. We did start off with a bang. I was told coming in the door that we really didn't have that many structure fires in East Gwillimbury, yet less than 12 hours later, we were going out the door to the first one for the year. I think you should be proud of your East Gwillimbury firefighters. They do an awesome job, both our career and our paid on-call people. So 3 significant fires in a fairly short period of time. It doesn't reflect in any way on the fire department, I don't believe. They do an outstanding job with the circumstances that they're presented with. One of the factors in any fire is how quickly it is reported to the authorities. And in the case of the first one, certainly the house was essentially gone before it was called in by a passing police officer. It was literally in the foundation at that point in time. I'll share quite proudly with you, although I don't like to be prideful in anything I do, but I'll share with you the last big structure fire on Highway 11 was actually in King Township. And your firefighters did an outstanding job there. I visited the scene the next morning, saw what I think to be about $100,000 or $150,000 damage to a building that was easily valued in the several $1 million range. And that was only through the hard work and quick response of your firefighters that enabled that fire to be put out as efficiently as it was. And so that's a testament to the men and women who get out of bed at 4 o'clock in the morning, or whatever the case may be, and we owe them a debt of thanks, I think, and I say that respectfully. I think they're largely admired in the community, and rightfully so. They do hard work. It's a complex job. It's not one that's easily explained, and so to define what they do in a few minutes is really a difficult undertaking to try. And so I won't, unless you have questions, but we're always looking to improve. Whenever we have a major fire, you should know that we dissect those very methodically afterwards. We have what's called a post-incident analysis review, usually done within a week of the incident. We bring all the firefighters who were together at that scene together to debrief and ask questions. What went right? What went wrong? Were there any obstructions to your response? Did a train get in your way? We look at every single aspect of that response for learning opportunities. So we want to learn from each call we go to, because quite frankly, we don't go to enough of them. They're certainly not like Toronto, where they're going to structure fires every day, or Mississauga, or even Vaughan. We don't have that experience, so we have to use each and every one as a learning experience, and we do. We look for opportunities to improve our policies. We look for opportunities to improve our training. We look for opportunities to improve our equipment cache so that we can be prepared better tomorrow than we were today. And so I would just sum up my comments this evening by saying we have a great department here, and I'm proud to be associated with them at this point in time. So thank you.
Thank you very much, through you, Mr. Chair. I have one more follow-up question. Thank you, first of all, for the updates and the communications when these significant incidents do occur in our communities. We appreciate those. You brought up the word training, and since we're still in the early days of 2024, would you be able to speak to, give us just a general overview of the plan for 2024 in terms of training for both full-time and part-time firefighters in our community? Thank you.
Thank you for the question again, through you, Mr. Chair, if I may. Again, my comments are based on a short period of time that I've been here. We do have one full-time person assigned to coordination of training efforts, and he is a busy fellow indeed. With upwards of 80 staff on board, meeting their training needs is a daunting task, especially in light of the looming requirements for firefighters to be certified. You'll know that the province introduced mandatory certification for our firefighters, and that deadline for us, for the most part, is approaching in 2026. I'll share that we're in good shape with most of our areas there. We still have work to do in others, and indeed in one specific area we have till 2028 to achieve that certification. We're well on our way there, though. Our paid-on-call firefighters, they train through a week during weeknights, Mondays and Tuesday evenings at the various stations, and they train for about 2 hours on those nights twice a month. And so when you do the math, it reveals that those training opportunities probably are much shorter than they should be, but we make the most of them. So our paid-on-call firefighters, they'll train on everything from vehicle extrication from accidents to hose line deployments to search and rescue to ventilation. There are hundreds, literally hundreds of topics that we train on. And training is a good word, but it doesn't really give a good sense of what our firefighters do on those Mondays and Tuesday nights. What they are doing in a lot of cases is practicing. Now, that's a term that will go way back. When I first started, our training nights were called practice because we learn skill sets as young firefighters, but we just don't learn them once. Practice techniques have to be honed through repeated practicing of these skill sets, and we do that over and over and over again, so we get very good at them. Turning to our full-time career firefighters, they're all brought on board with skill sets that they have, and they train, I would say, virtually every day that they're at work. Specifically, we have set-asides Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays for specific functions. And on those days, on Tuesdays, for example, we call that Technical Tuesday, where the crews will train on technical rescue skills such as confined space or water and ice rescue, those technical skills that don't get used very often. We call those low-frequency but high-risk events. They are the most common events for firefighters to get injured or killed. And so we train on those on a regular basis. In fact, our full-time and part-time firefighters are currently involved in the water and ice rescue training for this year. And even though ice conditions aren't great right now, we'll make the most of them in the next several weeks to make sure our firefighters are out there honing those skill sets again that they've learned in the past. Wednesdays, I mentioned, are reserved for what we call blue card training. This is an important part of fire tactics and control to educate and train our incident commanders so they can make the right decisions on the fire ground. Every Wednesday, our full-time firefighters are doing that. And lastly, on Fridays, every Friday, they're training to improve their medical skills. Because medical calls make up the biggest majority of our calls, we want to make sure our skills are sharp there, and they are. And so the paid-on-call, or rather the career captains, are free to train on other issues as they present themselves. And I'll share as an example, just last week, one of our crews was out on a very cold day, pulling water out of a static source, out of a portable pool, if you will, and pulling it into the truck and then shooting out through the hoses. That's a difficult thing to do when it's minus 20 degrees out, to manage that skillfully so that the hoses don't freeze and so on and so forth. The captain on that shift saw the opportunity to train one of his younger fellows, and so they spent the afternoon out in very cold weather doing that. And that's just a small example of the training that our people go through constantly so that we can serve the citizens and the ratepayers of East Gwil in the best way possible.
Thank you very much. I think it's important for our residents and taxpayers to know how our fire department is continuously training and what they're doing in between the emergencies and the fires. So thank you very much for that update.
Thank you for the questions.
Yeah.
Well said, Chief. The low frequency, high risk is right out of the mouth of Gordon Graham, and I spent some time with him at the Fire College, and great things to listen to if you get there. Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you. The reason we have an agenda is so that items can be put on the agenda and we can read them and prepare in advance. So I'm a visual learner, so I missed most of what you were saying. So if we can have that report in writing as an agenda item so that we can be prepared to ask questions. So there's a number of things you said that I have questions on, but this isn't an agenda item. So I just want to make sure that we're sticking to our procedures, that if there is a detailed report like this, which is very good information, I just love to have it in writing so that we can be more prepared to ask questions. So perhaps we can get this on a future agenda. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, do we need a resolution to receive the information that Chief Broussard has provided to us?
Through Mr. Chair, essentially this was not prepared as an item, but however, if the committee wishes to provide additional instructions to staff, that would have to be done through a motion.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I would not like to see this received because it was verbal and I don't have anything tangible. And lining up with what Councillor Carruthers said, this information is important and substantive. And I think that if we were to do a training day per se for councillors on these items and understanding that in the future, I am a little bit thrown off that we got into this discussion and not being able to be prepared to discuss it and fully contemplate it for the residents of East Gwillimbury. But yeah, looking forward to an opportunity in the future when it's on the agenda.
Thank you. Chief Broussard.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And we're just trying to be responsive to council's questions this evening. I will share with you that I hope to bring something more fulsome back on the fire master plan. Indeed, there was some talk about a council workshop for that, so we can get into some of these details and with some more intimacy, because it is a very complex issue, whether we're talking training or whatever the issue is, very complex. So I hope that you'll see some more in-depth reporting on the fire master plan in particular, and then some drill down opportunities into the details.
Thanks, Chief. Councillor Roy DeClemente.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Perhaps I can paraphrase the last 15 minutes or so and just say, through you, Mr. Chair, that I'd like to make a motion that we request that the acting fire chief prepare a report or a memorandum to us regarding training opportunities and the outlining of the training for our fire department.
Okay, so we have that put forward by Councillor Roy DeClemente. Are there any questions on that? Go ahead.
I'm just going to be voting no on this, not out of lack of support for the fire department, but this motion was generated out of what I feel is not an agenda item. And while I respectfully didn't call point of order to the team that are sitting here, I'm going to be voting no to this because I believe that it we were going to be looking at this at a future date, so I'm not going to be supporting the motion because it supports the discussion out of context and out of order, which I believe.
Thank you. Go ahead.
We have a structure where we're sitting in committee and we have a structure where you can bring up other business. And so while it may not necessarily have been brought up in the appropriate fashion, I think that it was worthwhile information that we would like to have. And so this was brought up as other business I don't agree with how it was done, but I'm trying to find a compromise so that we can all ask the chief to actually prepare this information for us in writing, because I too am a visual learner, and I'm still stuck on Mr. Cook and his riding of motorcycles.
There you go. Sorry, Mr.
ahead.
Chair, in follow-up, if it's an item of urgency, that's how it would get tabled. But anyway, I'll take a step back. I'm still voting no. It doesn't mean I don't support fire, just talking procedurally.
Okay, can we have a vote on who supports that motion? And that would be 3 and against. So I would say against too. That'll come up in due time. So we will go with motion defeated. If I may, I don't want to speak for Chief Broussard or Acting Deputy Cook, but I know myself with the number of years I spend in fire services, these types of questions can be asked at any time with simply picking up the telephone. And I know that myself, I can talk fire all day long, and I'm presuming that Chief Broussard and Acting Deputy Cook are probably the same. So with that, we'll move it back to you.
Thank you, sir. Takes us to legal and legislative services. Any members of committee wish to speak to that? Staff? Seeing none. Wonderful. Other business? Pausing for a moment. Takes us to adjournment. Who wants to move adjournment? Councillor Foster, and we don't need a seconder, but we'll take it anyway. Councillor Roy D. Clemente. All those in favor? Motion to adjourn at 5 p.m. Wonderful. We'll see everybody back here shortly.